Today on the Sovereign Sisterhood Movement podcast, our weekly astrology update, where we're going to be talking about the powerful Mars conjunction with Jupiter, who is also squaring Saturn. This is probably one of the most disruptive conjunctions of the entire year. We're also going to be looking at some very transformative teachings around generational healing, specifically uncoiling your spiritual gifts and breaking free from ancestral fear of power. We're also going to be looking at this week's Ancestral Tarot reading, which is guiding us to understand the blocks to our spiritual intuition. So, welcome and let's embark on this journey of generational healing and empowerment, reclaiming our sovereignty together. For all of you who are new listeners to our community, let me introduce you to the Sovereign Sisterhood Movement. We are a global initiative dedicated to helping women like you holistically heal and break free from generational cycles of emotional pain and trauma. Our approach integrates both scientific kundalini yoga therapy approach and also the spiritual, A Course in Miracles spiritual psychotherapy approach to disrupt generational karmic patterns of pain and trauma, where we create a safe space for healing and for visibility. Thank you for being here. This week's podcast episode is a very, very important one because it really speaks to the core of the women that I was incarnated into this body to serve and to assist. So today's topic is something that is very near and dear to my heart, and I can't wait to share all of that with you. Now, before we get started on today's generational healing topic, let's first start with our astrology for the week, because everything is energy, and astrology is the oldest science known to humanity. And it helps us really understand, as above, the cosmos, so below within us. So this week, I wanted to really focus on two very specific transits. Transits are different things that happen throughout the astrology, throughout the year, throughout our months and days. And last week, I gave you an overview of what to expect with this month's energy as it relates to astrology. Particularly this week, though, I want to go deeper into those teachings and talk about first Mars going conjunct Jupiter, squaring Saturn, which is a big deal for us this week, and also talk a little bit more about Mercury retrograde and why there's a big shift in energy this week, particularly with that retrograde. So first and foremost, this week we're also going to experience these two planetary bodies that are known as Mars and Jupiter coming together conjunct Gemini. Now, Mars and Jupiter, that was a pretty big deal. It happened about, over a month ago, where Mars and Jupiter, first of all, Jupiter spends at least 2 years in each sign, in each planet. So Mars and Jupiter coming together really shifted the energy as it relates to this new cycle we're starting with Jupiter. When Jupiter expands and makes things grow. And now in Mars, it's a completely different story, right? Or now conjunct also Gemini is a completely different story. And when Saturn gets involved, conjunctions are not so unpleasant. Conjunction is just the planets are sitting across from each other. When we talk about squares, that's when it gets really interesting, because squares are really challenging. They kind of create tension. They're not necessarily something that is fun to navigate through. Now, Saturn in general is a planet that represents everything that is tangible, that is held within time. Saturn is known as Father Time. And really, it's all about the physical world, our role in it. Its domain is that of legacy, of boundaries, of commitment, of ambition, of being able to actually stay disciplined. That's Saturn for you. Now, when Mars and Jupiter ignite this passion, these ideas, this inspiration, this growth, while it's in Gemini, Saturn then grounds this energy into something real. It's here to do something with it, to build. It's not just an idea anymore. You're building something tangible that's going to last, that's going to be very fulfilling. So what happens with this transit is that we really are learning to believe in ourselves. We're learning to then look at these ideas and intentions and goals that we've set out and breaking them down and using the Mars passion with the Jupiter expansion of that to look at these karmic cycles, to look at what Saturn is teaching us about discipline about birthing the actual idea. Saturn's energy is very mature. It's very responsible. So this week, you might be really inclined to learn to balance this enthusiasm with practicality. While you might feel really inspired to start new projects, you really honing in on your authentic self and what you're here to do, you need to take the time to plan and to set goals, the vision, long term, and even break them down. I mean, now we have artificial intelligence that can help us create long-term goals and even break down day by day. I mean, you can go to our ChatGPT or Claude. I'm kind of enjoying Claude more. I feel like she's more like sensitive, and I don't have to repeat myself as much. But you can go to Claude and upload all of your goals that you set out 5 years, 10 years, or even if you don't have any goals. Let's say your goal is, I don't know, to create a $1 million company within a year, or to get into a relationship, whatever that looks like, right? Then you can go into ChatGPT or Claude and break down, well, what would someone who was growing a $1 million company need to be doing? What are the activities and the goals? I want you to break them down by month, by quarter, and then by day. All of us can do that now. And then the other part is going to be execution. Because a big part of what this energy this week is that you're going to have to learn to practice patience. Because the square with Saturn is one that creates tension, and it brings also at the same time, opportunity for growth. So it's very important for you to take these small, consistent steps towards your goals versus trying to just eat the whole shebang in one sitting, right? So you're going to feel this passion, but then it's like going to feel overwhelming because you're like, well, how am I going to do this? And that's where Saturn is going to make you or force you to break it down quarterly, monthly, daily, or whatever that looks like, which I don't think is a bad gig. I think that's amazing. So then we have also happening this week, while all of this is happening, we're wrestling with our goals and what we need to do to make them happen. Mercury, remember I told you last week that Mercury was retrograde? Well, people always talk bad about Mercury being retrograde. It's the biggest meme out in the world. And it's just because Mercury is the only planet that goes retrograde the most throughout the year, 3 or 4 times. It's not a bad thing at all. And it really depends on, nothing is bad in astrology. It's how you perceive it. And it also depends specifically how it's playing out in your birth chart. So the cool thing about Mercury is that it started retrograde, which is an inner journey, right? Where we're really crossing the T's, dotting the I's. And I laugh because challenging things might come up, technology, communication, things of that nature. But now Mercury was retrograde in Virgo, perfectionist Virgo, get it right, right? And this week on the 14th, now it goes from being retrograde in Virgo to now we're retrograde in Leo. And what does that mean? Well, this is all about the self. So now in Leo, Mercury retrograde is about being invited to review who we think we are, our value systems, our beliefs, what we limit ourselves and what we think we can and cannot do, and especially what we are worthy of. Experiencing more Jupiter, right? Things become really personal when Mercury goes retrograde in Leo, because the questions then become, how accurately can you see yourself? How much of your worth are you honoring? The intrinsic worth. We're going to talk about that in the ancestral guidance this week and in the generational healing part. Why and how is your unique frequency an impact on those around you? Your heart and all that exists within it. How can you recognize the preciousness and the pricelessness of that? While it's in retrograde, Mercury in Leo, it's a beautiful chance for us to observe this narrative through which we see ourselves, through which we move, through which we hide, through which we express and identify ourselves. This whole narrative is telling us who we are, where we are safe to share ourselves, what we are worthy and capable of, and what love and joy actually look like. So what this Mercury retrograde now in Leo is going to help us do is it's going to help us use this time for self-reflection, where we can really sit and journal and meditate about our self-perception and how that aligns with our true self, where we can review past creative projects or forms of self-expression, where you're going to maybe find inspiration and ideas that you previously probably set aside. You're going to be mindful of miscommunications, especially those that involve your ego or your pride. And you're going to double check these important messages before sending them. Emails and text messages. You're going to take the time to nurture your inner child. We're going to talk about that today and engage in activities, hopefully, that are going to bring you joy and playfulness, so that as you put in this work that Saturn is asking you to do, while it sits square from a Jupiter expansion, who's not going to let you get away of not seeing the things that you need to do. And then also Gemini in the mix with Mars, passion, and Gemini, the duality. All of this together, I mean, if you really understand the characteristics of the planets, when you understand it, you really can see a beautiful picture playing out in the cosmos and also in your personal life. So this week is really all about you dealing with your identification with your wounded inner child and not being afraid of your spiritual gifts any longer, which is exactly what we're going to talk about in this week's generational healing. So let's dive into our main topic for the week: uncoiling your spiritual gifts, breaking free from ancestral fear of power. First, I think we need to explore the difference between spiritual intuition and regular intuition. Right now in our community, Satori Vitality and Spirituality, we are working through 21 days of spiritual intuition by activating what is known as the arc line. The arc line is the sixth body in the Kundalini Yoga teachings of science of energy. And the sixth body, arc line, very much connected to our spiritual intuition, which is really our ability to even access the Akash, the Akashic records, the book of life, which is a record of everything and anything that has ever been experienced in this world. When I refer to spiritual intuition, what I mean is going beyond everyday gut feeling. We have intuition, which is our gut feeling, our body response, but spiritual intuition is a very profound connection to universal truth, to universal wisdom. And it can manifest in so many different ways. How does it manifest? Well, yes, we know about the traditional clairvoyance, which is the ability to see visions or images that are related to the past, the present, or future. We know about clairaudience, which is the gift of hearing messages or guidance from the spiritual realm. There's also claircognizance, which is clear knowing or intuitive knowledge without any logical explanation. There's clairsentience, which is the ability to sense or feel energies, emotions, or physical sensations of others. There's also empathetic abilities. And this is a really important form of clairsentience, where one can deeply feel and understand the emotions of others. Empaths usually are very well versed in clairsentience, because they can often absorb the emotional energy of those around them, which can be both a gift and a challenge if they don't know how to channel the energy. There's mediumship, ability to communicate with spirits or those who have passed on. There's energy healers, the capacity to channel healing energy to others, often through touch or even just intention. Many of us, especially the women that I work with and that I speak to, have these gifts, and they're lying dormant within us, or they're suppressed by generations of fear and social conditioning. I used to do this all the time. A big part of why I would numb my emotions with alcohol, well, of course, it was primarily because of the generational patterns of pain and emotional wounding and the way I identified as a wounded inner child because of these experiences. But now, after doing the healing work, what I realized is that the real pain that I was numbing was my spiritual gifts, my ability to read energy. Because my mom, she raised me Catholic, and she was Catholic herself, but she was so afraid of these things because she couldn't explain them with words, that she became a very logical Taurus. And even though my grandmother was very connected to healing modalities, even though she kept them quiet, because we're going to talk about the witch's wound here right now, which is not that my grandmother was a witch, although I wish she would have been a witch. I feel many part of my ancestral lineages were witches, and witches is not, when if you really look at the root definition of what a witch is a woman who is connected to nature, to the natural elements. That's what a witch is. And many of our grandmothers and great grandmothers, especially, they have what is known as the witch's wound, which is, remember, at one point, even in the 1920s, I was just sharing this story with my community this morning. When I went to Guadalajara in Mexico, we went and toured this area where there was a convent there, where there are nuns, but prior to there being nuns, there lived indigenous women who were healers. They used herbs, they used energy, they used intuition, they used all of these things that I shared with you as gifts to heal the villages, and they were renowned. I mean, we've always had oracles that read tarot or read the future, Nostradamus even, and why no one talked as bad about him as they did all of these different women that were healers. In Guadalajara in the 1920s, religion came. Catholic religion came and said, this is blasphemy. You're a witch. You're not allowed to practice these natural healing modalities anymore. So they literally killed all of the indigenous people, all of the indigenous women from this place where they were the doctors. They were the healers of these villages, and they converted it into a convent where they now put in nuns in there. And they were not allowed to practice any natural healing capabilities. So for a long time, I was the only way that I could really hide those spiritual intuition, because for me, it's more about reading energy. I'm not like, I don't see the future, psychic future, although in meditations that has happened to me, but not as constant as really being able to sense and feel energies and emotions of other people. I didn't necessarily, as an empath, I didn't take them on. I just ignored them and I numbed them through alcohol. I didn't realize that I had that gift of being able to be in the presence of someone, whether virtually or even far away or in person, and understand the deep pain that they were going through. My problem was that I didn't learn how to heal myself first when I would do that, and to see myself as the Christ, accept that Christ in me, to then be able to see that in others. And because of that, I was very afraid of these powers. I was very, very afraid of even talking about them. So what did I do? I invested my entire life in making sure that I was completely what people would call normal. So I became a real estate broker, top of my game, president of several nonprofit organizations, a mover and shaker involved in the local, international, and national industry, you know, reach levels of success so society could then deem me as successful, so that I could run away from these gifts, so that so people could accept me, right? Society could accept me. And especially having a mother who didn't honor her own gifts. My mom is incredibly intuitive. She doesn't accept it as a gift. She just thinks she knows what's up. She's very, very well versed in her sense of feeling energies. And like I said, my grandmother was a healer. She used herbs and plants. She used ritual, ceremony, prayer. My God, my grandmother's prayers still protect me today. But she was very, very involved and very, very much driven to follow the Catholic religion, which I don't think is bad at all. I still honor the Catholic teachings, because those are my grandmother's prayers. But I can now go beyond that and really understand the true teachings of our brother Christ, how to go beyond being a martyr, how to not feel that you are strange because you have this deep intuitive ability, or you're a healer. That's what A Course in Miracles gave me as a gift. The true teachings of our brother Jesus Christ, so that I could become closer to our brother Jesus Christ, closer to God. Know that there is no separation from God. That's what A Course in Miracles gave me. And when I started to release the guilt and the pain, I started to honor my gifts. When Kundalini Yoga found me, I became incredibly more sensitive and intuitive. Because the reason why we're not intuitive, which we're going to talk about here right now in a few moments, is because we have emotions that are stuck in our body If you've been through generational trauma, if you're identified with the story of inner child wounding, then of course you're not going to be intuitive. Of course you're not going to be sensitive. I always tell the story of the doctor. He's actually a Harvard professor as well, and he sits on the Guru Ramdas Center of Humanology, which is where I study to become a Kundalini yoga therapist. And he's one of the leading yoga researchers in the nation, and especially in the University of Harvard. And he's a doctor, trained Western physician doctor, who is also a Kundalini yoga therapist, practices Kundalini yoga, has been practicing Kundalini yoga since the 70s. And he can literally, with his two fingers, go up to you, put his hands on your pulse, and tell you specifically what organ you have a disease in and what the root cause of that organ failure is. Why can he do that? He's not special. He's not weird. The reason he can do that is because instead of negative, low frequency emotions that run through your body because of the trauma you've been through Kundalini yoga, he can allow the flow of energy to move through his body, mind, and spirit, which makes him very sensitive to read energy. So these things are not like some weird, abnormal things. Like Tesla said, I've said this quote many times. Tesla said, and I'm not talking about Tesla, Elon Musk, reptilian guy, not at all. I'm talking about the original Tesla who invented electricity. He said, either you're born with these gifts, which is what happened to him. The reason why he was a futuristic, why he could invent electricity and give it to everyone for free, is because he was tapped in to God consciousness and he had these gifts. But he precisely said, and this is a quote from him, either you're born with it or you need to learn to develop those gifts. And the way you develop those gifts is through Kundalini yoga. He literally said those words. So many of us have these lying asleep, dormant gifts, and then we suppress them through generational patterns of emotional trauma, through addictions, through depression, through all these different things. And we don't allow ourselves to become the high priestess that we truly are. If you're a cycle breaker, if you're doing the inner work, the shadow work of facing yourself, you're a high priestess. Because a high priestess represents the connection you have with yourself and to God, which that is what intuition is. But for many of us, this connection has been severed or suppressed due to generational patterns of fear of spiritual power. Why would we be afraid of our spiritual power? Because our grandmothers got burned at the stake for being healers. Our grandmothers got burned at the stake for being able to understand the future. And that is a generational pattern that gets passed down over and over and over, which clogs up your throat chakra, which makes you so afraid of these gifts that you have to then numb yourself. The scientific aspect of spiritual intuition has to do with your pituitary gland. This is the master gland. This is in the 21 days of the spiritual intuition that we're working in inside of my community. It's daily teachings for 21 days. Then there's the meditation work. Because through meditation, this master gland located at the base of your brain, associated with your sixth chakra, your third eye, in yogic philosophy, it secretes hormones that affects various bodily functions, including our stress response and our overall well-being. And when we experience generational trauma and we stay under chronic stress because of it, or fear, it disrupts the normal function of the pituitary gland. That damages your intuitive senses. So meditation, and there's specific meditations that you practice specifically for the pituitary gland, that you practice specifically for your intuition. Because what it does is it balances is through sound, through breath, mantra chanting, through movement. It balances and activates this gland that then enhances our intuitive abilities and our overall well-being. Because when your overall well-being is in alignment with who you truly are, you're going to be more intuitive. Now, right now in our closed Facebook group, we're doing practicing a specific meditation. Now, this is a private Facebook group. I'm not talking about my group coaching program, the Sovereign Sisterhood Movement, which is not open for enrollment, or Satori Vitality and Spirituality, which is the starting point for the women who are just new to the generational healing journey. We also have a free, private, complimentary Facebook group, the Sovereign Sisterhood Movement, which I will link below here, which you can join us. We have a special meditation that we're practicing all month of August, every Wednesday at 9 a.m. And we're learning more about this, about not being afraid of our spiritual power, about opening up our intuition. Every week we're taking on a different topic, and then we're practicing a specific meditation to help us. This month, we're working on the Parikriya, which is a meditation for self-efficacy. It targets different areas of the brain, which are going to help clear these blocked energies and reactivate our innate intuitive gifts. So join us out over in our closed Facebook group. Like I said, I will link it below so you can join us there. Private, complimentary Facebook group community, where not only can you learn about these teachings, you can practice, and you can ask me any questions there as well. We want to support you on your journey, on this generational healing journey, which honestly is very difficult to do alone. This is where community comes in such a big way. So I hope to see you there as well. Now that we've talked about why we're afraid of our spiritual gifts, why we're afraid of our spiritual power, let's turn to our ancestral tarot reading for the week. And this week, I was very precise. I usually ask, what's the energy for the week? What are the things that we need to look out for? And what are the things that we need to see as opportunities? This week, I asked a different question. I asked, what is holding us back from our spiritual power, from our spiritual intuition? And what came out was out of this world, because it's exactly the way that we have been incorporating these teachings of spiritual intuition in our community and what I've been talking about here. The first card that we got this week in the immediate past is the Judgment card. And the Judgment card upright. Now, this card is all about going through a spiritual awakening. So in the immediate past, you have been going through a major spiritual awakening where you're purging old beliefs. This is you overcoming self-judgment and judgment of others. That is what the shadow work is, the inner work that we do in the group coaching program, the Sovereign Sisterhood Academy. Why? Because that's what makes you a high priestess. There's only a very small percentage, 1% of the human population, that actually has the courage or is willing to face themselves. It's easier to be a victim in this world and to blame your parents. We don't do generational healing to blame or to find, to continue to feel like victims. We do it to release ourselves from judgment. We do it to heal our minds. When we heal our minds, our bodies heal. And what healing the mind means is you're going from an untrained mind that is constantly judging yourself and others to a neutral mind where you're accepting. That's a Judgment card too. You went through a journey of self-acceptance, where through that, you're recognizing your spiritual powers. You're recognizing this responsibility that comes with them too. You've actually been finding comfort in being authentically you, and even maybe aligning with your spiritual family in this realm. It's not your blood family, but your spiritual family. That's what community, that's what I call my communities. They're my spiritual family, Satori and the Sovereign Sisterhood Academy. So you've been releasing guilt, and you've been readying yourself and preparing for any new challenges that come with a fresh perspective. You're learning to go beyond judgment of yourself and others so that you can extend your spiritual gifts, your ancestral gifts to others, because your ancestors didn't just give you trauma. There were incredible resilience, healing capabilities. There was a strength, wisdom that they're also here to give to you. Now, in the present, this is so trippy. The card that we got was the Sun, but reversed. The Sun represents our identity, how we see ourselves. And what this card is telling us reverse is that you are currently neglecting your true self. There's some inner child wounding. You're neglecting your intuition. Why? Because you continue to identify the sun reverse identity to being wounded, being broken. There's a big need for you to release these ego-driven identities that were formed in pain. You may be facing right now these temporary obstacles that are clouding your enthusiasm, your optimism, and you're experiencing disrupted connection to your divine spiritual source. In the Sovereign Sisterhood Academy, we're working through 40 days of activating the divine purity of our inner child. And what we've already established in the short 7 days that we've been in this 40-day challenge is that the higher self is the exact same thing as your inner child. Your inner child is not a separate aspect of who you are. The only time it becomes a separate aspect of who you are is when you have made an identity of that inner child of being wounded. So that's why Dr. Gabor Mate says trauma is not what happens to you, it's what happens inside of you. So what does that mean? Well, let me take it further. It's the identities you created from that experience. That's what happened inside of you. So you went through child abuse, physical, sexual, emotional abuse. It's not the event that's creating the identity of pain. It's the belief that you now think and believe that you are unlovable, unworthy, that you are broken. All of these unconscious thought patterns, or maybe even conscious, that you have become addicted to. That's the impact of generational trauma that now is causing you to struggle to accept your spiritual gifts. So remember the question was, why am I afraid of my spiritual power? Why am I afraid of my spiritual gifts? You went through a rebirth. You learned how to go beyond judgment. You're accepting the high priestess, but these childhood wounds that you continue to identify with are covering the sun up, are covering your clarity. There's an urgency with this card to stop neglecting your inner child, your higher self, your intuition, so that you can release these identities, so that you're able to then commit your mind and heart to remove the blocks to spiritual intuition by addressing childhood experiences that disrupted your connection to the divine, so that you can cease identification with generational trauma patterns, especially as it relates to childhood, because that's what the sun reverse is all about. Now, in the immediate future, the story just continues to unfold, because in the immediate future, we got the Queen of Coins. And in the Queen of Coins, what she's asking us is that as we look ahead, we're being warned, because she's reverse, of potential neglect of our own self-care, of our own personal environment, and the most important thing, of not accepting and embodying our intrinsic worth. The reason why you have not followed your spiritual intuition and why you have not surrendered to your spiritual powers is because you ask yourself, well, how is that going to pay me? How am I going to get money? How am I going to live in this world? And the whole thing is, when it's reversed, the Queen of Coins is telling us there's an imbalance between material focus and your spiritual needs. You need to reestablish and ground yourself in a stronger foundation, where you need to be very cautious of materialism, which is overshadowing your spirituality. And the reason that you need to do this is because you need to reconnect with your true nature, with spiritual renewal, so that you can understand that true wealth, the people that have really created amazing things in this life, that have sustained it, and that have not had to sacrifice their families or had to go into deep addiction in order to make it happen. Those people, the reason that they did that was because they were being authentically themselves. When you are authentically you, you get paid to be you. Right now, you're not getting paid to be you, because you're still integrating this big spiritual awakening that you've been through. And you're still releasing that inner child wounding identification that you continue to identify with. So your intrinsic worth goes beyond how much money you have in your account. And having money and wealth is not a bad thing. But when you make that your focus because you want others to approve of you, it becomes your demise. So there's a urgency here for you to seek ways to renew the sacred relationship with yourself, with earth, and with God. Because this week, what the ancestors are saying is that it's time for you to celebrate your spiritual awakening and the profound purge you've undergone. This journey is going to require you to move beyond self-judgment, the judgment of others, where you've begun to embrace your spiritual power and you're integrating all of these past experiences of your childhood pain so that you're able to then move forward and understand your intrinsic worth. Understand that your spiritual gifts are your highest power, and without being afraid, using that spiritual power responsibly. Cherishing the connections that you made with yourself, with God, and sharing them now with others. So why are we afraid of our spiritual power and our spiritual gifts and intuition is because we still are identified with the generational patterns of wounding that we've been through. So what do we need to do? We need to release and do the inner work, the shadow work of facing ourselves. Because just as much as we are the problem, we're also the solution that we've always been waiting for. So let that resonate, let that marinate, meditate on it, and really bring yourself into your heart so that you can start to surrender and accept your authentic power and not be afraid to use it. So in closing, today we talked about the astrological transits of Mars conjunct Jupiter, square Saturn, and Mercury's retrograde, which has offered us a lot of tips to navigate these energies this week. We dived into uncoiling our spiritual gifts, discussing various ancestral abilities and gifts like clairvoyance and empathy. We learned why we're afraid of them, how to start the process of becoming not afraid of them and accepting them. We also talked about this week's Ancestral Tarot, which provided insights into our spiritual journey, which highlights the importance of being grounded in our truth, in our nature, in our intrinsic worth. So remember to join us this week in our closed Facebook group, the Sovereign Sisterhood Movement, which I'll link below. We're on Wednesday at 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. I'll be offering this week's life healing session where we'll be practicing this very powerful meditation. And I'm going to go deeper into understanding why and how we become afraid of our spiritual power, both from a spiritual perspective and a scientific perspective, and how the ancestors are guiding us and assisting us on this journey. So, of course, if you found value in today's episode, please take a moment to like, to comment, and subscribe to our podcast. Your engagement helps our community grow and supports our mission and movement of generational healing and reclaiming our sovereignty. Thank you all so much for being part of the Sovereign Sisterhood Movement. Until next time, may you embrace your gifts and walk in your true sovereign power. Satnam. I'll see you soon.